Over the past few years, South Park has shifted from a show about absurd, everyday chaos to one that feels like a direct reflection of how absurd real life has actually become. Matt and Trey's once outer-worldly storytelling, episodes that drew from random, funny things that they noticed in their own lives, has evolved into something far more political and cynical. The show isn't just mocking society anymore, it's documenting society's decay. And the newest episode takes this idea to the extreme, using satire to comment not just on Trump or politics, but on South Park itself and what it's turned into.
The truth is, I think a lot of people are just afraid to admit that South Park sucks now.
The episode starts off with Randy picking up Stan from school. They're on their way home, but you might be wondering, where could their home be? Last season, the Marshes finally sold off Tegrity Farms, Randy's marijuana farm. Now, the whole concept of Tegrity Farms, on paper, sounds like a hilarious concept if you guys remember the medicinal fried chicken episode where Randy gives himself stability balls to get medicinal weed. If you know, you know. But overall, the idea of Randy leaving South Park to become South Park's Kush carrier didn't work out so great in my opinion. The execution wasn't as funny as the concept itself, and I mean, it literally didn't work out because they killed off the concept and killed off the farm. But no, Randy and Stan don't live back in South Park anymore. They actually live in a hotel at the beginning of the episode. Anyways, Randy assumes Stan is mad about Tegrity Farms being shut down. Stan says, of course he's not. And if you pay attention to this episode, Stan kind of acts as like a metaphorical voice for all South Park fans. Like, specifically in this case, most of us were not that sad about Tegrity Farms being sold off. And if you were wondering what Randy's gonna do for work now that he doesn't sell weed, well, he actually didn't forget that he's a geologist. But he can't get any work with the USGS because of the government shutdown. So fresh off of unemployment, Randy has a great idea. The family should move into Stan's grandfather's old folks home. Meanwhile, we get our first scene with Trump. Him and Satan are demolishing a section of the White House, of course, because Trump is really doing that in real frickin' life to make a ballroom or something. Absolutely insane. And Trump is warned that someone out there might be looking to stop him and Satan from having a baby. If you guys don't remember, it was Peter Thiel who believes that the baby will be the Antichrist and he's trying to stop it because no one's wiener except for Trump's is small enough to fit into Satan's butt. And JD Vance is also trying to stop the baby from being born so that he can be the one to replace Trump when his term's over. Now, they introduced the U.S. State Attorney General, Pam Bondi, in this meeting where they're warning Trump about the threats to his baby, and she's got literal fecal matter on her nose. Whose fecal matter and why? You'll understand that later in the video. Ultimately, they don't know why someone would want to destroy Trump's baby, but the theory is that because he's demolishing the east wing of the White House, he's unleashed some sort of wrath or some sort of spirit. JD immediately calls Peter Thiel to warn him that the White House is catching on to their plans, and we see Peter Thiel in a motel with Cartman, who's pretty much sedated. Cartman was believed to be possessed by the devil through the 6-7 meme in the last episode, and Peter was supposed to be taking him to Washington. I don't think they made it to Washington yet, and Cartman's out cold. We still don't know what truly possessed him or what he'll be contributing to the storyline overall. But what's possessed Stan is some sort of depression from living at the old folks' home. You thought it couldn't get worse than Tegrity Farms? Well, it did. Kyle and Kenny come to visit him, and this is their first appearance in this new season. And they were barely in season 27 either, which is basically really season 28 with all the continued storylines and all that. I mean, I think they were in one episode where the school's betting on Kyle's mom destroying the Middle East, and that's what I was talking about with my critique last episode about the show's new direction as a whole. Their core characters have barely been used to enhance plot lines of recent episodes, which in my opinion takes away from the fun of the show. It's definitely a common criticism because the South Park creators realized it and mentioned it in this episode. We'll touch on that shortly. So Kyle's telling Stan that, it's all good, this move to the old home, nothing to be embarrassed about, everyone's having a hard time right now, right? And Stan says that that's the problem. Each week there's one new stupid thing after the other, and the problem is no one's doing anything about it. Ultimately, everyone's too afraid to admit that South Park sucks now, and it's all because of this political stuff. We're all bummed out by it. This is what Stan says. And he goes on to ask Kyle and Kenny, remember when we used to do stuff, just us guys? Ever since all this political stuff took over, what happened to us? He tells Kenny, I haven't heard you say a word in months. South Park is getting ruined, and all of us Gen Alpha kids are just sitting here watching it happen. So this is what Stan is telling Kyle and Kenny, while he just moved in to an old folks' home. Now, it's absolutely crazy because I made a video last week where I said this exact same thing. A lot of you guys didn't like it, which is okay, but maybe I'll play a little clip of it here just so you understand where my headspace was at. instead of focusing on the boys and their innocent reactions to a messed up adult world, the spotlight now more so relies on side characters like Randy or PC Principal, who are basically mouthpieces for real-world political satire. Every season feels more like a chapter in a bigger social commentary and less like the wild, ridiculous playground that it used to be. It's almost turned into a weekly social thesis that's disguised as comedy. I like when there's less pressure or suspense or less consequences to a South Park episode. I'd rather they keep it somewhat lighthearted, like they kind of did that well with the Labubu episode, but I feel like their storylines in older seasons had a lot more room to thrive because they could concoct the most wild storylines, the most wacky adventures and hijinks that the characters would get into, but there was no real consequences, right? And as a result, you can push how wild and outlandish these episodes could be because you knew it would all come full circle by the end of the show. Like, I like the idea that I can miss one episode of the season and not have to worry about not understanding certain jokes or references, and I don't need all these external characters having such a serious role with such grand social commentary. Like, it kind of pisses me off that we didn't see Kyle, Kenny, Stan for this entire episode, and we barely saw them for the entire season. And it almost seems like this is done on purpose. Like, this whole narrative of Trump and Satan will lead the boys having to do something to stop Trump from doing something crazy to the world. But I don't even care for that. I would just rather see them mess around, trying to deliver a Lord of the Rings corn movie back to Blockbuster, burying Butters in a bunker so Cartman can go to Kyle's birthday party instead of him, having the school gerbil get stuck in Mr. Slave's butt so that Mr. Garrison can get fired from the school. I mean, even with storylines like that, you were still getting that meta-societal commentary about, homophobia within society. But it was done so in a way where the characters didn't feel like they were the subject of this societal chaos, but more so, they were the agents of chaos. They were the ones causing these outlandish things to go down, instead of kind of being like the puppets or the victim of whatever craziness is going on within society. And it created a more unique universe for them to exist in. And don't get me wrong, again, South Park is still great for many reasons. I love the creativity behind spinning this 6-7 joke into this satanic ritual, this grand storyline, or flipping the Israel situation into a plot about the absurdity of online betting. It's very creative, but it feels like South Park fits a different purpose than it used to. It's not meant to just satirize the absurdities of society, but more so act as a time capsule of where we are at this point in time. Outside of just the mission it used to have of creating the most jam-packed, absurd, but still tight-knit stories about Matt and Trey's observations of the world, it went from feeling like this was a reflection of Matt and Trey's world to Matt and Trey's observations of the world as a whole, which kind of takes out the human element of the show and makes it sometimes feel more like a lecture on the downfalls of society rather than poking fun at random everyday things. But at the beginning of this season, or should I say season 27, they were implying through Cartman's identity crisis now that woke is dead, that they don't know where a show like South Park's place is within the current world, where everything's so polarized, tensions are higher than they've been in decades. And I guess these highly politicized macro-environmental storylines are the medium that they feel best utilizes the show's strong suits. And while it might not hit like it did back in the day, regardless, no matter what they are, I'm still here for the adventures. Okay, now we're back in the new video. Now, I don't think this just speaks to South Park. I think this is an issue with all of television, movies, entertainment as we know it right now. It's even bled into comedy podcasts. Like, you have comedians acting like real politicians. So when Stan says this, I don't think he's just kind of speaking as the voice of anyone hating on South Park's recent direction. I think he's speaking on how people feel about comedy and entertainment as a whole right now. But to keep it on South Park, my biggest criticism was that, they used to kind of create their own original storylines based off real life experiences that Matt and Trey would go through. Now they're just kind of satirizing the real world. And yeah, I said this in my last video, and I think some of you guys brought in, some great points looking at the other side of things, right? In that it's only storytellers like Matt and Trey who have never been confined or bound to certain censorship rules or creative limits. And because of that, they're some of the only people with powerful enough voices within society that are able to deliver these grave warnings about how dark the world has become without getting censored. And right now, it's more important to document this craziness, to document and emphasize how we need to be more cautious about the threats that we're seeing to society versus just documenting a bunch of fart jokes, right? And I understand that. Maybe, I'm fortunate enough to be privileged enough to just want some fart jokes for my favorite TV show versus feeling relieved that I'm not alone in this chaotic nightmare that we're headed in. And I said it in my last video, I don't really know much about politics. I'm a Canadian. We're very far removed from a lot of the good and the bad that's been going on within America. Maybe I got to do more research. Maybe I got to expect more from, influential, powerful voices like Matt and Trey. Maybe it's not the time in history for lighthearted fart jokes. I definitely understand that. And I think at the same time, there's also something to be said for the fact that society in certain aspects is so cooked that Matt and Trey don't even need to think of insane storylines anymore. The stories write themselves because society is so insane right now. Like, how many times do you see something crazy happen online or in the news and someone comments saying, like, this feels like a South Park episode? Matt and Trey probably know that the world right now feels like a South Park episode, so South Park is literally just documenting the world. And they kind of emphasize this in the first episode of season 27, where Cartman feels like he has no value or use to society now that woke is dead, because now everyone's kind of just like Cartman. And while they're using Stan in this episode as a device to speak to how, South Park fans feel about the show currently, in that episode, Cartman is used as a device to express how South Park and their creators feel lost in this world of chaos, bigotry, hatred, etc. This used to be the show known to push the limits for how abhorrent and intolerant your jokes and thoughts could be. The absurdity in the storylines always had a strong message at the end, though, delivered by Kyle and Stan. But at this point in time, Kyle and Stan delivering those same "I learned something today" monologues would fly over the heads of the majority of society, because society has become as unhinged, as chaotic as a South Park storyline from 2005. And I can't emphasize this enough. I'm not a political guy. I'm not a Trump supporter or anything Canadian equivalent to Trump in any regard. I understand that some people think he's doing great things. Some people think he's doing horrible things. Some people are in the middle. I think there's criticisms to be made for every and any political party over the last few years. And that's where my second question kind of comes into play. I do like the satirizing of Trump in this new season, right? I'm not someone who feels insulted by this in any regard. Go and watch my old videos. I said I loved how they brought back the Saddam Hussein type of Trump character. I always said I thought it was also a genius way to revitalize the Satan character. I liked the whole storyline of, Trump effing Satan, that whole metaphor for Trump literally being Satan. I was hoping for a more epic plotline, even along the lines of some Epstein stuff involving Trump in the Mar-a-Lago house. Because, again, we only saw that one episode of Mar-a-Lago with Mr. Mackay, who may still be stuck there. So I say all that to say, I am all for the absolute clowning of Trump when the jokes feel creative and outside of the box. But two things. Number one, they kind of feel a little stale at this point. Again, kind of like Matt and Trey are just going through the motions of whatever's going on within the news in that week, placing Trump in the middle of it instead of thinking outside the box, maybe turning Mar-a-Lago into like Imagination Land Part 2 or something like that. I feel like there's a lot of room for them to do wilder things. And my second point is, and again, I'm not a political guy, but I am curious, like, where was this type of energy for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? I mean, come on.
What did you say?
I said, come on.
Maybe he's right. Come on.
Like, guys, Biden was falling off airplanes, off his bike. He had speeches like this.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word.
And what would that be?
I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping.
Oh, really?
It was obvious Joe Biden was very old, right? As an outsider looking in, I almost thought like it was kind of unfair to the American people to even let someone in that physical condition be running for a second term. It's good that, I guess Kamala stepped in. But now, I think you can be on the right or the left and see at the very least this. If South Park wants to stay so active in commentating on the political state of the world, that's great and all, but why completely skip over any single Biden joke? They had no problem back in the day making jokes about Obama and Hillary. I just want to see my favorite show crack as many jokes about the world as they possibly could. And what about Kamala as well? Kamala was on the Call Her Daddy podcast to attract some younger voters. A podcast that, correct me if I'm wrong, started off talking about oral sex. Like, imagine telling someone from 10 years ago that the strategy of the 2024 presidential race would be for the male Republican candidate to make an appearance on a live stream with a gambling 20-year-old degenerate streamer in Aiden Ross, while the female Democratic candidate would be winning the young vote by going on an sex podcast. Again, another example of everyday life feeling like a frickin' South Park episode. And I understand South Park used to go at both sides of the political spectrum. I understand a large percentage of the people criticizing how political the show has gotten are people on the far right who feel offended that their daddy Trump is being made fun of. I'm not with that. I think that's BS. I think whatever your beliefs are, you should be able to look at yourself in the mirror and laugh sometimes. So I'm not mad in the slightest that they're making fun of Trump too much. I think Trump does tons of ridiculous things that deserve to be made fun of. But I do think we can all be honest right now, looking at this kind of objectively, and realize that they're running jokes at this point that kind of feel a little uninspired and unoriginal. The show used to feel timeless because it made fun of everyone. Now it feels like one joke after the other where the humor's losing its edge because, how many times are we going to say that Trump has a tiny wiener, right? There are some hilarious aspects to this episode though, so let's kind of review the bigger picture here. South Park is making fun of itself for falling off, and that appears in many different layers of the dialogue throughout this episode. Number 1. Stan, Randy, and the family, the main family of the show, they're moving into an old folks home. The face of the show, moving into a retirement home. Do you guys see the parallel here? They're referencing the fact that people think South Park itself is getting old. People were heavily critical of the whole Tegrity Farms saga, and they went from moving into Tegrity Farms to moving into an old folks home. Maybe trying to imply or saying they recognize the fact that some people feel the jokes are aging badly. Then there's the fact that they won't move back to South Park, and Stan says the reason is that South Park is dead. It's all about the political stuff now. And through Stan saying that, it's showing that South Park as a whole, again with the Marshes being the face of the show, not returning to South Park, maybe Matt and Trey are saying they won't go back to their old ways. They won't go back to Randy being a geologist living in a regular home. And it's been years since we've seen storylines where the boys are just in their homes doing everyday kid things, getting up to different random adventures. Because again, like Stan says, everything is too political. So ultimately, Stan's idea on how to fix South Park from sucking is to start an online community of other people who feel like South Park sucks now. And this kind of speaks to or makes fun of reaction communities as a whole right now. They've made fun of this in the past. Years ago, actually, they were kind of ahead of the curve. Like when Ike was watching someone else play Call of Duty instead of actually playing the game itself. And Kyle, who was of the previous generation, thought this was cooked. But now they're taking this joke to a whole other level. And it speaks to the very real situation we're seeing where people are building their whole identities off of their opinions. Communities are forming online because of certain political views you share, polarized thoughts you have, whatever the case is. Whatever your interest is, there is an online community for it, right? I'm guilty of it. Like I said, I was making discussion pieces last week about South Park being weak lately. Maybe Matt and Trey watched it, and this is what they thought of to satirize it. Stan, Kyle, and Kenny making their own online videos and communities about how South Park sucks now. So, back to Trump. Pam Bondi, she's the brown noser. She's got a lot of crap on her nose, and it actually derives from sniffing the booty hole of the T-Man. Trump is tripping about what he thinks might be the evil spirit that could be stopping his baby from being born, and he thinks it's a creature lurking in the shadows of the White House ever since he destroyed the East Wing, a womanly figure with a large hat covering her face. Trump calls her it. His advisors are at least smart enough to know that this is just his wife. Trump almost forgets he has one, which is obviously pretty realistic. Again, they don't even need to invent storylines or character traits here. The ideas come from what really goes on within society. And it's pretty hilarious. It's just a question of how will this age in 10 years from now when we may not even remember that Trump is destroying part of the White House or, he can barely look at his wife. I do understand it in this period of time because there's no need to even get creative on these aspects of the show when the stories write themselves. Trump really does barely remember his wife. He really is destroying part of the White House. He really did shut down the government so Randy can't get a job. This isn't something that Matt and Trey just thought of. Reality is so cooked that they just have to pull from whatever is going on within the world in that particular week when they write the episode. It's kind of scary, but it's also what Stan was referencing when he said South Park sucks now. Every week, they just get bummed out by more political craziness. The boys can't just be boys anymore. And it's kind of crazy to hear Stan say this. It's obvious that Matt and Trey are highly self-aware. So speaking of Stan, he's shocked to realize that his South Park Sucks community has blown up overnight. Tons of likes on their video. So what do? Well, they launch phase 2 of what having a successful online community means in 2025. You start selling some sort of scam. And this is very apparent. How many times have you guys seen one of your favorite YouTubers or just online creators sell some sort of scam course, a scam product, or even worse, a scam crypto? And it's very easy to create a crypto scam. Why? Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, transactions, they're mostly anonymous. They're very hard to trace. They're not regulated by the government or any third-party entity. And they're very easy to quickly create without any regulation. And if you have a following, it's very easy to promote them. A meme coin is a cryptocurrency made as a joke or based off internet memes, but people sometimes buy them hoping that their popularity will make the price rise. And this is very popular with a lot of influencers nowadays. Go look at the Hawk Tua coin. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, that girl literally lost all her internet stardom because she scammed all her fans into buying a crypto. And what she did, and what Stan, Kyle, and Kenny are about to do, is what's called a rug pull. You create a coin, you own a lot of the coins in circulation, and you hype up the coin to endless degrees. You say it's going to the moon, it's going to go crazy. People buy it thinking that they'll make money, and when they buy it, the price keeps going up, and once it goes up, you end up pulling out all of your ownership, which quickly makes the price crash. So yeah, I mean, step 2 of building an online community is starting your own meme coin and scamming all your audience. And they're creating the South Park Sucks coin. And it's hilarious because as they announce the coin online, Stan reads this massive disclaimer in like 2x speed about the dangers of investing in his scam coin. And it's like a Bible worth of disclaimers to show you like how much of a scam these things really are. I mean, I'm surprised he made the scam coin in this episode before Trump actually did, considering Trump really did make a meme coin in real life. And now, speaking of Trump, he uses towel to dry his butt after a shower. Yes, Towley is still stuck in the White House. I wonder what's going to happen to him, or Mr. Mackay, or Cartman, or Clyde at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. They're setting up a lot of storylines here to cross into each other, with, again, Trump at the center of it by the end of this whole season. Now, Kyle's catching on to the fact that this crypto coin is an absolute scam, but Stan justifies it by asking, what's wrong with building a community to make some change, but also making a bit of money off it? And it's here where we're reintroduced to another legend of the show, one of my absolute favorite side characters, Kyle's cousin, Kyle. He's going to be their crypto advisor. It's kind of funny because last time I remember him being a helpful little finance guy, he was auditing Cartman's good and bad deeds before Santa came to give out gifts on Christmas. And it's kind of funny, a Jewish kid was in the business of accounting for a Christian's holiday faith. So anyways, this time around, he's making sure he helps the boys ensure that a big profit is made off their new meme coin. All they got to do is keep hyping up the coin with cheesy catchphrases like, this isn't about money, it's about a movement. And then in the next few days, they'll rug pull the coin and run off with other people's cash. Kyle's cousin Kyle emphasizes that the crypto corruption in the White House is off the charts. So it'll be easy for them to pull off this somehow legal heist. Now, speaking of the White House, they're examining what the weird crap is on Pam's nose. Again, the brown noser, the butt kisser of Trump. And they realize that the brown stuff on the nose is part Filet-O-Fish, part Taco Bell, and part someone's own semen. Basically everything that Trump has consumed over the last day, which is pretty hilarious. And while they're doing this, the South Park Sucks crypto coin is going to the moon. And now it's time for Stan and the boys to rug pull it, cash out, and run off with the profits. But Kyle, not the cousin, the real Kyle, he's out for all this. He doesn't understand what they're doing this for. He thought this was about making South Park a better place. But Stan says, ultimately, even though it sucks, this is what the world's come to. So they just have to take advantage of where we're at. And he says at least we're being men and being in control. Maybe this speaks to Matt and Trey's, dilemma of succumbing to what the world has become, being forced to give off these highly politicized storylines of the absurdities of the world instead of just going back to the boys being boys. And I thought that because Kyle replies to Stan saying, you can't fix things if you're only thinking about yourself. And maybe that goes back to what you guys were saying in the comments of my last video about there being a bigger purpose for the political messaging in the show recently. That we shouldn't just be thinking about what we selfishly want to see from the show, but instead let the creative geniuses who conceive the show bring it in the direction that they feel is best for the show itself and for society and the future of entertainment as a whole. So now Kyle's cousin Kyle is on his way to DC to meet with Donald Trump Jr. to get some sort of FCC approval for crypto trading. Basically so that Trump and his son can approve of the crypto rug pulls and the boys can scam everyone with their South Park Sucks meme coin. Cousin Kyle, he makes it to DC, but as he's meeting with Don Jr., they're about to have a massive meeting in the White House about the evil spirit lurking around Trump, his wife, of course, which they now call the entity of this house. They all gather together and say, we know you're sad and lonely, but please leave Trump alone. The spirit possesses Pam, and the brown on her nose disappears, and she starts saying, deception, deception, Epstein, you, and then points to Trump. She says, he lies, corruption, and all of a sudden, chaos erupts. And this terrifies cousin Kyle into admitting that there has been corruption. They've been lying about crypto, and it's all one big money laundering scheme for the rich to get richer. He thinks he's stopping the evil spirit from unveiling its wrath by just admitting the truth, but ultimately the episode ends with him getting arrested for exposing the truth, or in Trump's perspective, talking crap about the White House for scamming with crypto. And Pam Bondi says, "We'll continue to prosecute anyone who talks crap about the White House." Pretty ironic because she has Trump's crap on her face. Oh, and the boys couldn't even rug pull their own coin because they didn't know how to do it without Cousin Kyle, and he was too busy with his White House meeting to answer the phone while the boys needed his help to cash out as the coin kept going up. Now, the episode also has this classic little nostalgia element at the end, or it does a twist on the old ending where Kyle and Stan quote-unquote learned something today. But in this case, it's Kyle teaching Stan a lesson, which is ultimately that things will go back to normal, even if it's hard to see, and in the meantime, we just have to make the most of where we are. Which ultimately maybe is what Matt and Trey are doing. No, this isn't the South Park from back in the day that I knew and loved, but it's kept up with the times. If you want an idea of where the pulse of society currently is, no one is going to give you that more raw and unfiltered than South Park in 2025. I've had these criticisms of them falling off for years. Most people are saying it today because they don't like how Trump is being targeted. But like I said before, I kind of like that aspect, right? I think it's funny. It adds poignant observations of the absurdities going on in politics and society through this raunchy humor. But in my view, I just want the storylines to be sharp. I don't want to feel like I'm watching a news timeline of this week's political events. I want something that shows off Matt and Trey's storytelling skills and imagination, and the boys to be at the center of the chaos. But hopefully, like they said, things will soon go back to normal, in the show and in the real world. So ultimately, I think South Park's bigger purpose today is not necessarily about the jokes anymore, but instead, they're holding a mirror to a world that's simply out of jokes. The absurdity we used to laugh at has become a reality, and that leaves Matt and Trey with two options: retreat into nostalgia or confront the madness head on. Whether or not you like the new direction, you can't deny that South Park remains one of the only shows bold enough to capture just how cooked the world has become. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.